What is happening, Gothamites? K-Wing here, and welcome to my audio podcast debunking the Arkham timeline. Now, this video is a response or stream, whatever you want to call it, to a video about the definitive Batman Arkham timeline or something like that. But this video is basically going to talk in detail about why that video has a lot of issues after 28 minutes into their 2-hour video. I am by no means going to call anybody out, saying, like, do name calling or, you know, anything unprofessional like that. I'm going to present the facts to you guys and explain why it's not canon. The only issue that I had with the video is that they present the comics as canon, as definitive, and a lot of you guys, my audience, would know better than that, as well as, well, some people in the Arkham community also know that the comics are non-canon as well. But people who aren't familiar with Batman and his world, well, you know, sometimes the research just isn't done. So, well, that's why I'm here. So, like I said, not going to be going after people, just going to put this information out there for people to listen to at a later time. I also will not be using images from their video, as well as, you know, just a reaction to the video. I watched the video myself last night, took a lot of notes, shook my head quite a bit, groaned a little bit, and, well, hopefully I can do this in under 2 hours. So I will not be answering any questions at this time, so please save them until the end. And like with most of my podcasts, I will be lowering the chat, and then we'll have a fun discussion afterwards and probably bring up some of these points. So I wish I could put some cool Batman music to get into this, but I can't. Anyway, it's time for debunking the Batman Arkham timeline on the Nightwing 01 channel. Okay, so more or less, like I said, the first 28 minutes of the video was fine. I have really no issues with it. It's when they start talking about the Batgirl Begins prequel comic, which is still kind of up in the air, so to speak, as, you know, tie into the game. Well, most people tend to agree that these comics were made as a way to make people pay money and read a cool Batgirl Arkham prequel stuff instead of, you know, having it fully connect to the Matter of Family DLC. And I'm not saying that the writing is bad or anything from these comics. I'm just going to argue that they're not connected to the games, and the only in facto canon is the games, because the comics just have way too many inconsistencies. I tried for years to connect all the dots for the Arkham games and the comics and the mobile games, and I'm just going to tell you honestly, it's impossible. It can't be done. I thought that this video actually was going to be pretty solid and that they did a great job. And then I was disappointed because, well, they brought up a lot of material that is just, it doesn't work with the games at all. And as Rocksteady, has told me in the past, their universe is the games, not so much the additional material, with exception to a couple novelizations and a few comics, which we will talk about. But anyway, back to the whole Matter of Family DLC Batgirl stuff. So if you go back to the City books, the reason why this really isn't connecting to the old Arkham City stuff, or rather new if you go by, you know, where everything is going. In the comics, Dick and Barbara were a thing, or at least had been at one point, when, as you guys know, in Night, she's with Tim Drake, even though she wore an R for Richard and had tons of Flying Grayson stuff in her apartment. I know, try to explain that, right? But yeah, we know how that all turned out in the game. Rocksteady did get the whole Robin and Batgirl relationship correct. It was just the wrong Robin. And I will never, ever let them know otherwise, okay? But let's move on. Let's go to Batman year 5 and 6 from the video and dismantle it a little bit. So, again, this is a 2-hour video, by the way, but I only have issues with, we'll say, half of it. I am a very, very passionate person when it comes to continuity and Batman stuff, so hopefully I don't come out too blunt. It's not my intent. My intent is to educate, not infuriate. Ooh, that's good. I need to use that for something. What could I use that for? Anyway, The Robin stuff mentioned in the video is okay, because they're going over the Arkham Origins stuff. And we know that Robin is, of course, mentioned and shown in Arkham Origins multiplayer. And it's supposed to kind of be Robin year 1, year 2-ish. So that'd make it like Batman year 4 or 5. If we're, going with the whole Batman timeline and trying to connect it to the Arkham stuff. I know the Arkham timeline does it just a little bit different, but you can feel free to correct me in the chat. I'll look over it later. But Grayson's age, I will say this, is never mentioned in Asylum through Knight. Never in the games, anyway. Maybe they did it in the comics, but I don't believe so. You can even go back, if you don't believe me, and look at the Nightwing bios from City and Knight. You'll find his weight and his height. You will not find his age. So just, putting it right there. Now, how long Grayson was Robin is also something that has never really been defined. And I know that the Arkham Wiki likes to think like the New 52 timeline a little bit, meaning short-term Robins, max of maybe 2 years or, 6 months in the case of Jason. But Arkham was actually built around pre-Flashpoint DC Comics and, of course, Batman the Animated Series, which is why Paul Dini was brought in. The very first Arkham game was supposed to be a celebration of, I believe at the time, Batman's 75 years in comics, or 70 years. I'm not really good with dates, but you know where I'm going with this. So it was a accumulation of fan service for people who grew up with the animated series, as well as people that were currently reading the Batman books that coincidentally were being done by Dini and other writers at the time. So, of course, Paul was incorporating things that people knew from Batman canon. So certain things that were mentioned in Asylum never really were mentioned in City or Knight. So you could kind of see Asylum as more of a celebration game than a canon game, but yet it is canon because it sets up all the other games leading into, of course, City and Arkham Knight. But for the most part, you have to view Asylum as a celebration game and take bits and pieces of it to use in later canon, because some things technically never happened in later Arkham games. So just something to bear in mind with that. And yes, Dini did, of course, write Asylum and City. So how do we get to this? So as you know, Dini's mindset is pre-Flashpoint, not New 52 like the Origins stuff. So they never really had the Origins stuff in mind ever. I don't ever think that Dini wanted to set out to create a storyline that would be about Batman's first or second year in activity. So when WB Games Montreal went ahead and did stuff, they didn't really pay attention too much of what Dini had done. They just wanted to tell a cool Batman story, and they wanted to do their own origin or their own Batman story, but they got permission from Rocksteady to do a Batman origin. Although that can also be kind of argued, because I know for a fact that a lot of people at Rocksteady were not too thrilled with a lot of, we'll say, some of the time errors that were introduced because of Origins, and some of the inconsistencies that it creates, as well as changing some of the characters' origins that, Rocksteady was not too okay with. In fact, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but if you boot up your Arkham Knight game, which, as you know, takes place after Arkham Origins in terms of development. Arkham Origins was 2013. Arkham Knight came out in 2015. If you boot up the game and you look at Harley Quinn's bio, you'll notice that it doesn't say that her first appearance with the Joker was Blackgate, which was established in Arkham Origins and Blackgate. It says, in fact, that her first appearance with the Joker was in Arkham Asylum. So what does that mean? That means that Rocksteady is saying, well, we agree that some aspects of Origin was canon, not all of it was. So we're going to stick to our universe and just kind of play nice with WB Games Montreal. So that's why I've told you guys for years that some aspects of Origins that Arkham Knight mentioned did in fact happen, but the date and time of those events was handled much differently than what you saw in Origins. You get where I'm going with this? That's why I've always said Origins is technically not canon, and why it will never be included in any collections or anything like that, just because it created all kinds of problems. But you guys know that, right? All right. So anyway, I've always kind of viewed the Origins thing, and I'm just throwing this out here, Origins, Blackgate, and any future sequels that WB Games Montreal did, I kind of saw it as like a parallel universe to Arkham, like an Elseworlds. Arkham exists, and it does have an origin, and maybe some of Arkham Origins' origin was in fact what happened to our Arkham Rocksteady franchise, but we'll never know, because the continuation of the Arkham franchise is with Suicide Squad, and that has its own problems that we'll try to address some of them in this podcast. I mean, it's not going to be very easy because, well, Rocksteady does make things very difficult for me. Maybe they do it on purpose. No, I don't think they're petty like that. But, you know, people do like to see me squirm, especially when it comes to creating big Batman problems. Am I right? But anyway, back to the whole Origins connected to the Rocksteady universe thing. I really believe that it is two different Batman universes that are set in a Arkham dimension, or parallel dimensions, or whatever. For every action, there is a equal and opposite reaction type thing. So some of the events of Arkham Origins did in fact happen, and they were changed a little bit for Arkham Knight, but not necessarily the events of Origins that happened, like changing how Catwoman and Batman met in Blackgate, as opposed to what Dini wrote in, little Easter eggs for Asylum and City. Those type of things did not carry over to the other games, and vice versa. It was almost kind of like WB Games Montreal was creating their own universe, which in fact led to Gotham Knights, which is their own universe. So they still kind of did it a little bit. But yeah, it's crazy. I don't see, with all the little issues that Origins created, that it could fully be connected to future things. Namely, the time thing is a big thing that I have issue, and a lot of, we'll say, Arkham scholars and people like that, because it limits the amount of time that Batman needed to be active in order for Arkham Asylum to happen. Case in point, Jim Gordon's rapid aging, which is faster than a two-term president, by the way. He goes from looking like, we'll say, a healthy 40-year-old to, by the time Arkham Asylum comes out, the man is looking like he's pushing his grave. And then when Arkham Knight comes out, he is looking like the same Gordon, more or less, from what we had in Arkham Origins. So, I mean, there's all these little, we'll call them hiccups, involved with Arkham. So, yeah. So, one way you can look at it, which will help you guys, again, is what I mentioned before about the whole pre-52, new 52 style of storytelling. WB Games Montreal is a much younger group of developers. No shade to Rocksteady. So they were more inspired by New 52 storytelling, whereas most of the team who worked on Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and Arkham Knight, most of them were pre-52 Batman fans. So it was almost like telling two different multiverse Batman stories, basically. And if you look at the comics and the games in this light, it makes a lot more sense from the type of Batman that we play as. You play as a much younger Batman, inexperienced, just like the New 52 comics from WB Games Montreal, and probably from the Gotham Knights universe. They're going to borrow a lot from the New 52. Whereas the Arkham Batman feels like a weathered, older, very competent Batman, which we saw tremendously throughout the pre-Flashpoint comics. So the inspiration was very, very clear. And the fact that, Scott Snyder is involved with WB Games Montreal just furthers my point about Gotham Knights and all this other stuff, like being very, very younger based. But Blackgate also had like a lot of holes in it, which I really don't want to talk about Blackgate at all. So let's jump around to the Assault on Arkham aspect of their video. So we're now probably, we'll say, 45 minutes into their video, something like that. So as soon as Suggestive Gaming, which is the name of the people who made this, brought this up and connected it to the Arkham timeline, they've committed their first very real sin. I can forgive them for their explanation of Origins and Blackgate and stuff like that, which Blackgate is terrible. Blackgate should be just get rid of it completely because it totally undermines Batman's experience through Asylum. Where Joker, essentially takes over a prison, and it follows the same beats as Blackgate. So, yeah, I know Rocksteady and WB Games don't really like it, but WB Games Montreal and whatever team made it, it's important to that storyline. And Blackgate also sets up the Assault on Arkham movie, which is connected, and I will say this, the Assault on Arkham movie is connected to the Origins and Blackgate universe. It is not connected to Rocksteady's franchise because the movie also creates a lot of problems. So I'm not removing the sin that I just gave to the YouTuber that made this video, okay? So for starters, Rocksteady asked WB Animation to follow their Arkhamverse to the T, but the movie was made as a sequel to Origins. So the people who made the movie at WB Animation did not follow what Rocksteady asked them, which was their Arkham universe. They used Origins as a blueprint, and everything hit the fan afterwards. And you could tell watching the movie. It's a fun movie. I think it's, really enjoyable to watch, but as connected to the Arkham games in the comics, you can't. There's no way. And I'm going to tell you why, and then you can argue with your friends, okay? Because this is what we do here, right? We present the facts to you. We give it in an educated way that you guys can learn from and also pass on this knowledge as well, because a lot of people are missing out on some very simple clues that essentially this fun, Suicide Squad animation romp is not canon. And I'm going to go over why. The big reason why Assault on Arkham is not canon is because it kills a lot of later Batman characters in future Arkham games. Now, you'll notice how I said Arkham characters and not necessarily the Suicide Squad characters of King Shark and Captain Boomerang, who miraculously both appear alive and well in the upcoming continuation of the Arkham franchise, Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League. No, I said Arkham characters. Now, while you could argue that Captain Boomerang does appear in the Arkham Knight comics, or the prequel comics, which are not canon, but we'll get to those points later, I brought up Arkham characters specifically. Now, one of these characters specifically that is killed in the riots that take place after Joker lets all the inmates out of the asylum is none other than Two-Face. And I know you're thinking, whoa, hang on a second, when did Two-Face die? Two-Face is killed by Killer Frost as he's trying to escape from Arkham Asylum. And I know people are going to be like, whoa, wait a second, when did that happen? If you pause very briefly in the movie, you can see that Killer Frost uses her signature murder technique where she grabs the back of somebody's head and she freezes it completely, where either you would suffocate or two, your brain would just die because of the cold temperature. So Two-Face in this scene is not a metahuman. He is dead. And there is only one Two-Face in the Arkham franchise. So that right there, no matter what the other events of the movie are, would prove without a shadow of a doubt that the movie is no longer considered connected to the Arkhamverse, because a key character who appears in Arkham City and Arkham Knight and the last story of the Arkham franchise, A Flip of the Coin, is now dead. So that right there would create a huge, we'll say, tidal wave of issues. So, yeah, this movie is not connected to the Arkham games at all. It cannot be. It can't. And there are other Batman villains that are killed very comically by the Suicide Squad, where you'll have to pause your movie to see what characters are being killed off, and, be like, wait a second, what's going on here? So it was just a fun little movie that was made with the Arkham stuff in mind, but they did not follow that plan to the T, which is a big shame. So yeah, again, I'm not talking about the squad members that are killed and appear in later stuff. Talking about Two-Face. So killing him during the breakout was a big mistake. And Jay Olivia, I think that's the director's name, made a vital error by this. So remember that when you challenge your friends about why Assault on Arkham is not canon. That's why. The Arkham villains that are killed off, not necessarily future problems with Captain Boomerang and King Shark, which we'll talk about. But there's another Arkham character that is depicted in this movie that is well, it happens way too soon. Let's continue with the Arkham escape scene, shall we? So Bane's appearance is that of his Arkham Asylum 2009 counterpart, when this movie takes place the same year Robin quits, which according to the Batman Arkham Wiki, I believe that's around year 6 or something of the timeline. So Bane's appearance could be argued as an Easter egg for fans of, Arkham watching this movie, so think like fan service. However, this would be a major issue because Bane's appearance would not have been that of beastly, monstery Bane. He would look more akin to his Arkham Origins pre-Hulk setup, because at the end of Blackgate, that terrible game, Bane is starting to build up a normal appearance again a little bit, and May started his, Venom regiments like 2 years later, but he would not get to that monstrous size from the Titan formula because it never happened yet. This is pre-Titan Bane, and yet in this movie, you have literally 2009 Titan Bane attacking Batman and Gordon and falling into the river just like he did in Arkham Asylum. So you could make the argument that this is WB Games Montreal's Arkham universe, and this is what happens to their version of Bane. So he could kind of look like the 2009 version of Bane that's, all pumped up on Titan, but it's not the same Bane. It can't be. There's no reason. Again, Arkham Asylum takes place in the Arkham timeline as year 11, and this movie supposedly takes place in year 6 or so. Yeah. The transform monster Bane thing couldn't happen. And you have to remember, there was a lot of aspects of that whole torture, too. The torture came from an evil doctor, a lady doctor, yet 5 years earlier, the same monster Bane is again running around in this movie like no problem. It doesn't make any sense, and it screws up the events from year 11 big time. Everything else with Assault on Arkham movie would work canon-wise if not for Two-Face death, some other Arkham inmate deaths, Titan Bane, and, the shenanigans of Task Force X. But let's move to year 7 now, shall we? The Jason Todd stuff. This is sin number 2 for the video, because they used the Genesis arc, which the Genesis arc has been proven to be non-canon. Not only does it change Jason's origin and what happens to him, but it doesn't lie in with the games at all. It does its own thing. It follows its own story beats. It's a great story. Deathstroke saves Jason, all this other stuff. None of that stuff happened in the game. And the comics were just a cash in. It was a cash grab for you to spend money like I did to try to get more of these character stories when in fact, not connected, not canon. So the fact that this YouTube company or whatever decided to use Genesis as a basis for their timeline video, there's sin number 2. So the prequel to Arkham Knight has been debated as non-canon for years now. And even Rocksteady has come out and said, yeah, it's not connected. And there are a lot of deciding factors that prove it's an Elseworld story. Jason kills Bane, for one. Batman and Gordon examine Bane's corpse, number 2, so they know that Bane is dead. Bane's death is mentioned in that comic, and everyone in the underworld of Gotham knows that the big bad Arkham Knight was the one responsible for killing Bane, so that people will fall in line. Whereas the big problem in the game is this is never mentioned, and Bane is actually suggested to be alive in Gotham, and we have several eyewitnesses to this. There is a group of soldiers that are talking about Bane recruiting in Santa Prisca, as mentioned by different in-game dialogue. Also an Easter egg for Bane's past gear is found by the player, and no mention is ever brought up in the bio that Bane is deceased, which would, if the game wanted to, they could have put a little thing saying Bane deceased, but they don't. So that's right there. Batman makes no mention of Bane being dead. If he was dead in the game, more characters would have talked about it. And also, characters aren't really afraid of the Arkham Knight. They just see him as kind of this militia guy. And every one of Batman's villains is kind of doing their own thing. They're not really working with Scarecrow. They may have met up, like in the comics, but they're all doing their own thing. Two-Face is robbing banks. Penguin is doing his gun-running thing. And all the other villains are just running around crazy, like dogs chasing cars. They have no plan. It's every villain for himself. Whereas in the comic, it looks like everybody is working together, which would have been cool if the game did that, but it didn't. So, of course, yeah. The fact that no characters mentioned Bane being dead, it means he's not dead. And, there was no body. A big thing that also would contradict the books is if Gordon and Batman were aware of Bane being taken out, not only would they take notice of it, but all of the Gotham PD and Gotham City would be trying to figure out who was strong enough to kill Bane. If Batman didn't do it, who was this rando that killed Bane? There would have been stuff about it in the game, like at the GCPD. Like any of the characters would mention it. Because apparently in this universe, somehow Bane defeated Batman, like breaking his back. So they do reference Nightfall. I believe they do it in Asylum and City, but it's not really brought up in Arkham Knight that I know of because Bane doesn't appear in that game. It's possible Bane was supposed to show up in a later Arkham game, but for whatever reason in the comics, they decided to kill off the character. Now, you have to remember, when the comics and the games are made, they're made at different times, and they're made by different writers. So you have the game guy who's off on his own writing the story, and then you have the comic writers that are given a rough idea of how to connect things to the game, and then they're just let loose to do whatever they want. That's the one problem I have with tie-in material, as I learned working with Warner Brothers with the Batman v Superman stuff, because the people who were writing the tie-in material to Zack Snyder's movie were way off from what the actual movie was, because we know that, Ben Affleck was manslaughter Batman, whereas in the tie-in books and materials, Batman was someone who was familiar with Superman and also incorporated non-lethal measures against criminals. And I saw BVS. I didn't see Batman using non-lethal manslaughtery stuff, so you could go right there that people were doing their own thing. People had an idea of what Batman was going to be like in this movie, incorporating some elements from Christopher Nolan and, Keaton's Batman into their books. And wow, it's like reading two completely different things. Seeing the movie and reading the books, it's not the same Batman. So it's a fun Elseworlds potential, DC Cinematic Universe Batman, but it's not the same guy we saw in the movies. The same thing can be said for these Arkham books compared to the games. It's a different Batman entirely, with different outcome and different, mobsters and Gotham villains being killed, and just, yeah. So the fact, again, no one mentions Bane's name, and no one knows who Arkham Knight is, whereas Penguin, Harley, Two-Face, etc., everybody knows who Arkham Knight is in the books and what happened to Bane. So, without a shadow of the doubt, Genesis isn't canon and can't be considered as such. So, Arkham Wiki, if you're listening to this, I would kindly ask that you guys remove this section from the timeline because it never happened. It's just, it can't. I'm not saying, well, yeah, I am saying everything from the Arkham Knight comics is not canon. It can't be. So it's not up for debate. It's just, yeah. The Jason stuff from year 7 may have happened in some shape or form, but any use of Genesis is very suspect when connecting to the Arkham timeline and should be removed from the Arkham timeline, as both the game and the comic events play differently than one another 100%. Year 8 is when Jason is thought to be dead, killed by the Joker, so no argument from me at this part of their video. Year 9 is the Matter of Family DLC and the Killing Joke storyline occur, so we're later on in their video now. Year 10, the Oracle and Nightfall stuff. Interestingly, consider that this is supposed to be Arkham canon, I noticed that the video just skips over Nightfall completely. They don't really talk about the Oracle stuff, and they don't talk about Nightfall at all. Whereas I believe one of Dini's comics did a tie-in to Nightfall, or at least mentioned it. And since most of Dini's writings are considered canon from the Arkham comics, which there's very few Arkham comics that are considered canon. Example, Unhinged is not canon, but most of Dini's tie-in works are. And the fact that Nightfall did occur around year 10-ish of Batman's story, then I'm kind of surprised that they didn't even give it a brief mention. They just kind of go from year 9 right to 11 in the video, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, the video was kind of long, and, I was doing my best to take notes and other things while it was going on. So this is where things get a little dicey, though, and very long. Okay, so for instance, getting to the game aspect of Arkham, Dini actually does hint to the famous Chuck Dixon storyline, and I believe it's mentioned in Bane's bio, and Batman brings it up in-game, saying, "This time, Bane, I break you," during the events of Arkham Asylum, and he hits Bane with the Batmobile. The Nightfall Arkham story probably plays out similar to the 90s comic story, though Bruce has no replacement. I don't think Robin or Dick Grayson appears and, runs around as Batman. Eventually, Bruce returns, stops Bane, and sends him to Arkham, which would bring us to year 11, the Road to Arkham tie-in comics, leading to the Arkham Asylum 2009 game. So let's address some of this stuff real quick. While it's true, Road to Arkham shows how the inmates we saw in the game were placed into custody and eventually brought to the asylum, it changes how Bane became a monster, which is why I don't really consider the Road to Arkham comics 100% canon. I would say it's sort of canon, because you find out how Batman got like Killer Croc and Scarecrow and Joker, and everybody was at the asylum at the same time, whereas throughout Arkham's timeline, Poison Ivy and Joker and Bane and all these other characters are kind of not all in the asylum at one point. So that to me is kind of interesting. So anyway, we know it's the evil doctor who tortures Bane in the asylum and turns him into the Beast, right? But in the comics, there's a very different doctor who's shown messing with Bane, and Bane is terrified of this character. So this is a contradiction to the game, because if Bane was so upset at this person torturing him, then he would have killed this girl and her accomplice dead in the game, and made that person the focal point of his revenge instead of Dr. Young. So the fact that Harley Quinn in the book is the one administering the Titan drug into Bane's venom to cause him to go crazy, that would have been a key story element in Asylum, and it wasn't. We know that Bane was after the Brouhaha, I think that's how you say her name, the evil Dr. Young, and of course Bane had his revenge robbed when Joker killed Dr. Young. But it's these little things you need to pay attention to when putting these videos or podcasts or blog sites, whatever research material you're doing. You need to pay attention to all aspects of the books, because there's going to be several instances where it's just going to be like, wait a second, this is very different than the game. And then you have to make the decision, okay, how much of this book can be considered canon and how much of it is fiction? So, like I said, while the Road to Arkham books are actually very well done, there's several parts of those books that just have things that don't really flow well with the rest of the game. So you have to take those books as they are, and I guess you can take little bits and pieces from it, because for the most part, the Road to Arkham is okay, but the Harley Quinn Bane stuff can't be considered canon. So I would also say that a lot of the tie-in books by Paul Dini set before City are also canon. So the Titan Twins storyline, the Quincy Sharp bid for martial law taking over and sanctioning off part of Gotham to turn into Arkham City, the whole Hugo Strange Tiger Soldier thing, all of that stuff would be considered canon. to the because it leads into the 2011 game Arkham City. I'm in agreement with most of this part of the video, so I'm not really gonna talk about it too much. All of Arkham City is straight from the games, no issues, solid recap, good job. Now, the Arkham Knight stuff is filled with lots of issues that we're gonna spend, probably the rest of this, little discussion going over. Hence why the comics aren't really considered canon, and they can't be, because too many plot holes, too many inconsistencies, way too many errors that I don't even think I'm going to get to them all. I'm going to get to the most important ones, and probably ones that will be very easy for you guys to pass on, because the important thing about this channel is word of mouth and letting people know things, because it's basically hidden from the search engine. Even this reaction, or whatever you want to call it, like response video, is probably not going to be seen by anyone, so I'm just throwing it out there for people to use as research if they want to. My days of trending on YouTube are long done. But if you want to help, sponsor this video, you can consider becoming a member or join our Patreon. Anything you guys can do is always a big help, and I appreciate it a lot. So let's get back to the Arkham Knight stuff, because like I said, this is going to be long. Okay. Though the video does its best to try to explain a lot of these stories, makes the argument that they're canon, or the appearance that they're canon. I know, like, very briefly at the beginning of the video, like around the 50-second mark, they say that, well, maybe not all of this stuff could work out well. Namely, they brought up Genesis by name and stuff like that. But the fact that they still included this stuff in their video and they're presenting it as fact, I think that's what my biggest problem with the video was. Is if you're presenting it as an opinion, well, I wouldn't be making it as a response. But you're trying to put this information out as this is definitive. There's no argument. This is the Arkham timeline, when it's not. A lot of the stuff that you bring up for Knight is incorrect. It's false. So I'm going to explain why. Okay? For one thing, in the Arkham Knight comics, let's bring up Jason. Jason is going around killing people that Batman thought were in police custody. Quite a bit. In the game, if the GCPD was finding dead Batman foes, even D-listers, they'd eventually start to question what's going on with Batman. Now, a smart writer could have actually had Batman going around killing people and incorporated that to the Joker poison that's in his veins that's slowly turning Batman into the Joker. That would have been a fun little, story element they could have messed with. But instead, that's not what happens. In the comic, Batman is apprehending these D-listers, just doing his thing in Gotham. And Jason, as the Arkham Knight in costume, comes up, shoots him in the face with a shotgun. Several of them. And the police start to notice it, and they're like, hey, why did you leave these people alive right now? And Batman takes offense. He's like, what are you talking about? Whereas the police are kind of right. Like, Batman is apprehending these criminals, and then mysteriously, as the police arrive, they're dead. I mean, I'm no detective, but it would look like Batman had gone off his guano and started, killing bad guys. And that would put him at odds with Jim Gordon, and that would have made for very different story beats in the Arkham Knight game. And of course, this never happened. None of this happened. This is all fiction that can't be connected to the Arkham games, and to present it as otherwise is wrong in my book. So, yeah, the Genesis stuff didn't happen at all. It's cool, but it can't work. As far as the game is concerned, let's talk about the game. Gotham has been eerily quiet after the death of the Joker until, Scarecrow takes over the city in Arkham Knight with a bomb threat. And then people are panicking and, of course, exiting the city, which makes sense. But up until this point, Gotham is peaceful, I dare say. Joker's cremation went through without a hitch. Harley is behaving. Nobody is really trying to take over Gotham, unless you count that Riddler novelization that was made either before Arkham Knight or after, but is officially considered canon by Rocksteady because it's a really good story. And if you like the Riddler, I challenge you guys to take a look at that. We'll actually be talking about that later, but I just wanted to bring that up now, as I really support that as canon, and DC has stated it as canon, so I can't really argue with Rocksteady and DC, nor can I argue with the writer of Arkham Knight. So the Riddler side story novelization is totally canon, but this stuff isn't. It can't be. And I'm going to explain why a little bit more. So, okay, the tie-in comics, not only do you have a murderous killer on the loose, right, who's going around killing people that Batman's apprehended, but you also have a side story about Joker's death. So in the game, Joker's cremated, like you guys know, but in the comic, Joker has rigged bombs to explode in case he died throughout Gotham and at Arkham. This was never mentioned in the games, and the story would have veered off very differently, and characters would have brought this up because it was kind of crazy what Joker was able to do with his dying breath. Apparently he planned ahead of time more than just poisoning a bunch of people in Gotham with his blood. But it never happened in the game universe, so it is not canon. I've said for years that it's best to enjoy the comics and the games as almost separate Earths or separate entities, because while they share similarities, they aren't identical with one another, and they create so many inconsistencies and problems, which I know, I'm preaching to the choir. You guys are really smart. You get that, but, I'm just trying to provide a service for people. Big example, Arkham Asylum is completely destroyed in the Arkham Knight comics by Joker's hidden bombs. Joker leads Batman post-mortem to a place where he had a diary in the Arkham Knight comics, and Batman's presence inside this room in Arkham sets off the bombs that is supposed to be a final death trap. Like, Batman is reading this diary, and in this diary, Joker has a list of hundreds of names of people he killed, and on the last book, it says Batman's name because he planned on burying Batman literally in Arkham. The bombs go off, and Batman survives, miraculously, but the entire asylum is destroyed. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, so what does it matter that Arkham's asylum was destroyed? Now, you've played Arkham Knight, right? Where does the last battle between Scarecrow and Batman take place? Just think about this real quick. Arkham Asylum. And you'll notice that Arkham Asylum has power, meaning that there's still power in the facility, even though in the comic it's completely rumble. Like, there's nothing left of Arkham. It's decimated. It would take months and years. No, I take that back. It would take years to rebuild Arkham Asylum, and it's completely fine in the Arkham Knight game. So the fact that the entire Arkham Knight comics, this is a major argument that you can use with your friends, by the way. The fact the entire Arkham Knight comics, tie-in comics, mention and revolve around this story of the asylum being destroyed makes the entire Arkham Knight comics that are in this video, like, showcased as canon, in fact, not canon. They can't be canonized at all because Asylum is destroyed. And Asylum appears alive and well, maybe abandoned, in Arkham Knight. So that's something that you need to put your thinking caps on for, because there's no way that any part of the Asylum would be up and running after Joker blows it up. And in the games, he doesn't. There's no Easter egg hunt for Batman finding the missing bombs that Joker planted. He's just gone. He's cremated. That's it. But let's dive into this a little bit deeper, because I know some of you are going to be like, well, I mean, there's still a way. No. There's no way you can tie it in, okay? Just sit down, keep eating your snacks, and I'm going to continue, okay? All right, here we go. Uncle K-Wing's got you. So, while Asylum was completely destroyed and rubble, and would take years upon years to rebuild in order for, Scarecrow to use it as a base, which he is using it as a base, by the way. Most of Scarecrow's operation, he is not inside of Gotham He is at Gotham at Ace Chemical, and then he is taken back to his base of operations, Arkham Asylum, which makes sense because the Asylum has the waterways that lead into the city and all kinds of stuff, like, poisoning people. It's all good. That's where the big base was or whatever. Like, so yeah. But the Arkham City Endgame comics, which they're the ones that are not canon, it just doesn't add up. Now, I don't fault Suggestive Gaming or the creators for making this mistake. Many in the Arkham community tend to use this as an example when they put their timeline together, that, Jason and Batman had their first meeting when Jason tried to save him from Joker's bombs. But this is a huge error with a lot of timeline videos because it doesn't work. That's why you, the internet, and the Arkham community or Arkham clan has me. This is my job to correct people. So it would also be wise, again, if Arkham Wiki is watching this, to remove Endgame from the timeline on the site because its inclusion contradicts the ending to Arkham Knight. And that's a big thing. So if anything, that people listen from this video or they edit on that Arkham Wiki, please remove that. No offense. So let's talk more about the Arkham Knight comics a little bit, by them not being canon according to the game itself. So in the game, Gordon was never infected by the Joker's blood in any means during the cremation process, or however Joker did it. I don't know. The comic focuses on the story quite a bit for several arcs, meaning it has no connection to the game and it's its own thing for just the comics, like as a fun Batman story. And it's a really cool Batman story. It just doesn't work if you're trying to add it to the game because, I'll save you the trouble, internet. None of the Arkham Knight comics are canon with the game. Again, you can quote me on that. None of the Arkham Knight comics are canon with Arkham Knight, the video game. While amazing stories, no mention of any of this in the game. And considering how important this story arc was in the comic for, the tie-in stuff for Arkham Knight, and what Batman did for Jim Gordon by risking his life to save him from the Joker venom that was killing the commissioner, you would think that in Gordon's opening monologue to the game that he would have mentioned Joker's death. But Joker had no last will and testimony for Gotham. No bombs, no Joker poisoning for the commissioner. He just was a corpse. The video goes on to talk about more Jason killing thugs in Gotham, something that would have not gone unnoticed by our Dark Knight. He's very thorough, very good at his job. So he wouldn't overlook that. And as I've mentioned before, the police don't overlook Batman villains just mysteriously showing up dead. So if it actually happened, but it didn't, this is very good Arkham fiction and only fiction. But let's talk about another story that you could bring up as well. So the comics make mention of the whole Lucius Fox and Penguin story arc in the comics, where little bit of recap for you. In the Arkham Knight comics, prequel stuff, Penguin wants to get back at Bruce Wayne by stealing his fortune, his company, and putting the Cobblepot family back in the spotlight and good graces of Gotham. So he wants to do everything he can to smear Bruce's name, tie him to the criminal element, and just kill Bruce. So he hires a bunch of assassins, kind of like what Joker did in Arkham Origins, and he gets the Suicide Squad and other people involved to kill Bruce Wayne, but look at like it was a mob hit gone wrong, so that Bruce appears to be shady when he isn't. And then somehow Cobblepot, even with his terrible history, would hack into the Wayne files or something like that and paint the Waynes as the bad guys, and Cobblepot would come up smelling roses, and all the bad stuff that he did was just a what's the word am I looking for? It was done as a way of what his living conditions were, what his I can't think of the word. You guys can probably figure out where I'm going with this, but he had a bad racket in life because of his the way the cards were dealt for Penguin. So he has an excuse now, and Bruce Wayne and his family secretly were the bad guys. Now, all this is bumpkiss in the comic, but whatever. That's the basis for this whole Penguin arc. So, long story short, Penguin has Harley Quinn and some other people jump Lucius Fox. They steal his tablet, which is connected to Wayne Enterprises somehow. And Penguin is all upset because he's like, well, how in the world are we going to use this tablet? It's encrypted and only Lucius Fox can use it. And Harley's like, hey, Pengy, I have Lucius Fox finger and you could just use that. And which Penguin does. That's how he's able to access all the Wayne stuff and learn secrets about Wayne and start getting his money, all this other stuff. So right there, you should stop the video because it's just false. Lucius Fox did not lose a finger in the game. And he has no prosthetic. He has no scarring. It's not, never happened. Even in the comics, after he has his finger cut off, Lucius Fox shows the damage was done. He has like a wrap around his finger. He has scarring. He has, mentions, I can't type anymore. All this stuff points to it never happening in the game. Because when we actually get to the part of the game where Lucius Fox is interacting with Hush, you see that Lucius is typing fine. Whereas, the short time of like maybe a month or so between the Arkham prequel comics and the Arkham game, the Knight game, Lucius is completely fine. He's not ruffled or anything like that. He is totally cool. And so can't do it. The whole finger Harley Quinn thing, Wayne money arc, cool story, but it couldn't happen. And again, those points are A, he would be missing a finger in the Arkham Knight game. He would have B, shown that he had stitches or some type of bandage. And 3, there would be some mention of the incident of his missing finger as a joke that Bruce could do. And of course he didn't. So later in the comic, Mr. Fox has like a bigger role and they start plotting for getting a new Batmobile, which is also something to bring up with Fox. So the whole Batmobile incident, which I really want to talk about. Now, in the game, Lucius Fox is the one responsible for creating the Arkham Tankmobile. Whereas the comic, well, it does something very non-canon-like, but also kind of cool, I have to say. So, basically, this is connected to the whole Penguin story, too. Penguin learns that there's some secret tech that the Waynes are developing overseas or whatever. And what they don't really talk about in the video is Batman actually ends up fighting some people in Germany that are targeting like this German engineer that's making a new Batmobile. Though the criminal world doesn't know that Batman is having a new car developed. They don't know the Batmobile was destroyed. So as far as I know in the game, there's no mention of the Arkham Asylum Batmobile ever being destroyed. It's just Batman is using the Tankmobile on the streets for whatever reason to deal with the militia. So it's never really mentioned again what happens to the previous Arkham-mobile. But in the comics, Batman goes to Germany, has all these little adventures, and it's all interesting. So a German engineer in the comics is responsible for creating the Tankmobile, not Lucius Fox like in the game. So that right there also proves that the Arkham Knight comics are not canon. A lot of crazy adventures happen in the prequel comics in Germany. And when Batman gets back to the States, he tangles with Kid Shark, the son of King Shark, who blames the Dark Knight for his father's fate from the assault on Arkham thing, which isn't canon anyway, but it's interesting that this comic tries to tie back into that non-canon movie when the comic itself is non-canon. I find that interesting. So later that night, after defeating Kid Shark, who I believe was killed by Jason Todd, Tweedledee and Tweedledum are hired by the Penguin to steal some important Wayne tech that is flying into Gotham mysteriously from Germany. So the Batmobile, which the Penguin doesn't know is the Batmobile, because, Lucius Fox and everybody's really good about encrypting things. So even though the Penguin has a tablet that can find out different things that are happening with Wayne Industry and where Wayne's fortune is, all that other stuff, Batman and Lucius Fox are so careful that even in their own company, they have things encrypted. So people know something really important tech-wise is being flown in from Germany for the Wayne Foundation or whatever, but nobody knows what it is. So Penguin thinks it's like money or technology or something like that. He hires Tweedledee, Tweedledum, and gives them a monster-like creature person to go with them, and they hijack the plane, and everything's going really good. But then Batman gets an alert that things are going down. He goes to get his new Batmobile, easily defeats Tweedledee, Tweedledum, gets his German ride, takes it for a spin, and now we have another important aspect that this is no longer canon either. After taking down the Tweedledee cousins, the police ask why Batman hasn't killed the bad guys. So this is that scene that I was mentioning before. This is when it happens in continuity to these books. Batman looks puzzled, gets mad at the police, and the police say, well, word on the street is you're killing your D-listers. And he's like, say what? So that right there would be a huge part of the game's story, but it's only ever mentioned in the comics, so it can't be canon. Sensing a theme with all of this definitive timeline stuff, what must you know? You must know that it's not canon. At least the later part of their videos whenever they talk about the comic stuff. If they would just remove the stuff in their video that has to do with the comics, it's actually a very solid recap. It doesn't need to be 2 hours long because half of the video is fiction. I'm trying to say that in a way that's not mean, but I guess I don't know how. So later, Jason shows up, kills Tweedledee, because I believe he's trying to frame Batman with the GCPD. This is a thing they never really explored with the comics, so I don't know why Jason was going around killing people. I guess he was trying to show people he was different than Batman, but the police don't see Batman killing Tweedledee and Tweedledum anyway. So this kind of murder spree is pointless, but whatever. It's not something that goes unnoticed by the GCPD, and it comes up later in the story, but yeah, you have to scrub it from the canon because nope. The comic shows that the Bat family also keep pushing Jim Gordon to retire and run for mayor when he's actually very content being a police commissioner. But you know, the whole events where he was poisoned by the Joker, they're trying to be like, well, you know, there's a safer job you can get. But remember, mayors die quite a bit in Gotham, so I wouldn't really call that a safe job. A safe job would be Jim retiring and going maybe upstate New York or something like that, away from all the crime and just living the rest of his days in peace and tranquility. But becoming a mayor and a target, I don't think that's really best for Gotham, but that's just me. What I liked about the game is it wasn't a contingency plan for Jim to become mayor. It was what Jim really wanted to do with the rest of his life to help Gotham. So I feel like the comics kind of took away from that heroic change of career for Jim in the Arkham game, whereas in the comic books that people say are canon are kind of molding Jim into being something that he doesn't want to be. And it really feels like Jim is being pushed into that. Now we get to the Riddler's Gambit story, which is canon to the games, by the way, and the timeline. So you can keep the Riddler's Gambit. I will let you keep it, person who made this video and other people's timeline. It works. It's a cool story with the Riddler. It's got Batman and Robin action in it. It explains how Riddler got the Wonder Robots, how he went back to Arkham City and got all that tech to mess with Batman later in Arkham Knight. So pretty much all the little death traps and the different stuff that happens where Riddler's trying to see himself as the real nemesis and not the Joker for Batman happens in this book. It's a must read. I would pick it up if you can find it and add it to your Batman collection. It's really cool. If at all possible, I would do a book on tape of that. If DC would let me, I would do a licensed book of tape for people on Amazon Fire or whatever it's called, and that would be amazing. I would love to do the narration for that book. Just throwing it out there because it's a great book. So yeah, that stuff totally is canon with that stuff. If you're wondering where the book takes place in the timeline, it's months before Halloween. So a lot of people like to believe that the story is set like the spring of year 12 or 13 of the Arkham canon. So I actually plan on doing a lore video on this eventually because I really liked reading this story. So I'll save the fun details about all that transpired in that book for another time. And you guys will definitely want to come back for that lore video. But Riddler's Gambit, again, is a great story for Arkham Knight that ties in, and it's unquestionably canon. Now, the dates for the Arkhamverse is still debatable to this day. Dini had envisioned a much longer run for the Asylum and City Batman, and Origins was the one that created a shorter timeline because, again, they were inspired by the New 52 way of storytelling. So, a much younger Batman, a much shorter time as the Caped Crusader. So, no one is really sure how long Batman has been active till Arkham Knight. I like to think 15 years makes more sense than 12 in my personal opinion, but again, it's subjective, so... The video continues with the Arkham Knight comics as fact, which made me stir in my chair quite a bit. Talking now about the Robin special or the Robin annual comics, showing more about Tim Drake and being a teacher. Now, Tim's occupation is never mentioned in City or Night, the games, as far as I know, nor in the mobile games, which the mobile games aren't canon anyway because they're like the comics where they just go all over the place. You don't know where the mobile games are going. So it just bets to enjoy the mobile games as a parallel Arkham universe as well. In fact, Tim is depicted in the comics as much older than he appears in the game. You could put him around the same age as what Nightwing appears in the game. So he would be the same age as Tim Drake from the books. And then Tim in the games is much younger. I know that's confusing, but just try to think of it that way. Jason, during this time, is spying on Tim Drake as he takes his kids to some type of museum where they're held up by random mobsters, and Tim takes them all out, and Jason is kind of measuring up Tim's abilities to see if he's a threat. So Jason, according to this comic, was only Robin for about 6 months, not 2 years to 3 years like most Robins were in Arkham canon. Even Arkham Unhinged mentioned how long Robins were Robin. And I know Unhinged isn't canon, but you know where I'm going with this. The definitive video story thing continues with Killer Croc being sent off to the GCPD and eventually rescued by Deadshot and Boomerang for some reason. And yeah, Captain Boomerang was killed in Assault on Arkham, and yet here he is alive and well. Once again, proving Assault on Arkham is not canon. But neither are the Arkham Knight comics. Anyway, Croc joins the squad, and they end up fighting Batman later, who is protecting Bruce Wayne, their target of assassination. Deadshot ends up killing Captain Boomerang for some reason with a bullet to the head, which would make the comics non-canon for later Arkham Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League thing, considering, you know, Captain Boomerang is, well, not dead and Deadshot is now black. Huh. We'll talk about that someday. I know some people like to believe that Rocksteady is going to talk about the race change and Captain Boomerang and King Shark being alive and well, but they never will. I will tell you for a fact that Deadshot was changed because of Will Smith in the Suicide Squad movie, and that's all you're ever going to get. They will never, ever, ever sit down and explain the race change because that would cause Twitter Puritans and SJWs on social media to go insane. They'd get accused of blackwashing or whitewashing or whatever you want to call it, and it would just be a huge headache, so you'll never know. You'll never know the reason. I'm telling you the reason, that it's a corporate decision, and it's because of Will Smith, who's awesome. That's all you need to know. I would like to think that it's a parallel universe where Deadshot was always African-American, but it is what it is, so just don't worry about it. But Captain Boomerang and King Shark coming back to life, that's a head-scratcher, because most of the Lazarus Pits were destroyed by Batman, but oh well, who cares? So Alfred, during the whole Suicide Squad thing, gets a hold of Nightwing in the comics and asks him to help deal with the Suicide Squad incident, which would explain why Dick is actually around during the Arkham Knight game, but the game explains Grayson's reasoning a lot better, considering he's on a case to apprehend the Penguin and stop him from messing with Bloodhaven. So that storyline is better than the non-canon Arkham comics that people are trying to pass off as Arkhamverse canon. Same with the Deadshot and Batman working together to investigate Simon Stagg Industries. Batman had no suspicions of Stagg at all until the Arkham Knight game, and here he would have gone out of his way to arrest Stagg, who is basically using the remains of Clayface to create monsters and other really terrifying things in Gotham. So Batman, having learned all this stuff about Stagg and his shady dealings in the comics, he's already an enemy of Batman in the Arkham Knight comics, which can't be connected to the Arkham Knight game because it's not until later events of the story that Batman goes after Simon Stagg in the Arkham Knight game. You see where I'm going with it? It's really not hard to do this, guys. The Arkham Knight comics are not canon. They're not. Also, Clayface is dead and presumed dead after the events of City when he was fried in the Lazarus Pit by Batman. The Lazarus Pit destabilized him and killed him completely. There was no any part of Clayface that survived. The Lazarus Pit completely killed whatever part of Clayface was a monster and human, so he's gone. If he hadn't fallen into the Lazarus Pit and got electrocuted, then Clayface probably would still be around causing mischief. But the games is pretty clear that he's dead, and Rocksteady is very clear that Clayface is dead. So the fact that the comics brought him back as kind of like a zombie monster is just dumb. But they did that. So yet again, Arkham Knight prequel comics, he comes back as a metamorph. They're trying to say that he's supposed to be Metamorpho because Simon Stagg created Metamorpho. You know, they're trying to be clever. So this should be removed from the Arkham Wiki too because it doesn't work. The whole Simon Stagg story arc in the comics does not match up with the story arc from the game because the game would make no sense, and it also makes no mention of this. Also, considering what the comic Arkham Batman knew about Stagg again, and the fact Batman isn't hunting him at the start of the Arkham Knight game, none of this is plausible. It's all Arkham fiction. Let's continue with the Nightwing stuff. I liked how Nightwing arrived in the comics because it showed an interaction between Nightwing and Jason when Jason stole Nightwing's bike. And Nightwing was on his way to pose as Bruce Wayne, who is being targeted for assassination, Arkham Origins style. And the GCPD take Bruce Wayne in custody that's brought by Batman. So, of course, Grayson is appearing as Bruce Wayne, which is something that he does quite often. So, there's that. Jason is later shown being smart, using the data stolen from Nightwing's bike to hack the Bat computer and install countermeasures for his Cobra tanks against the new Batmobile. And let's just pause real quick here. I'm not going to take any questions, but I just want you guys to really sink this aspect in real quick if you can. Now, what was the game like with Jason and Batman's Arkham Tankmobile? As I recall, in the game, correct me if I'm wrong, but Jason didn't know about the Tankmobile. In fact, he was very angry that Batman had secrets that he kept even from Jason, because Jason was very familiar with the Arkham Asylum Batmobile, and what would have been considered the Arkham City Batmobile as well, which was a souped-up sports car. And then he came in contact with Batman's Tankmobile, which was a one-man army, and Jason's Cobra tanks would not be able to fight that. But here we have, going back to the comic, where Jason is installing programs into the Cobra tank prototypes to deal with Batman's Arkham Tankmobile. And yeah, that also has to be removed from the record as well, because that prequel comic stuff does not mesh well with the actual game and never happened. It's too many inconsistencies, as I've just proven in this brief little verbal illustration. And hopefully I'm doing a pretty good job of pointing out this stuff to you guys. And again, being nice about it and not too, me about it. Because, you know, I got a bit of a ego and chip on my shoulder, and I'm not really the nicest guy. So, yeah. Okay, so let's get back into the books a little bit. In their video, they talk about how Tim and Barb start dating for the first time in the prequel comics to Arkham Knight, which would put this during the 11th year of Arkham, right around year 12, right between year 11 and year 12. But, yeah, I'm going to debunk that right now. So the problem that I have with this is, if you go back to the Matter of Family DLC, which took place during Batman Year 9, they were already dating. They were flirting. They were already in the process of going out. I don't think they would have waited 2 or 3 years to seal the deal and start dating. They were dating and heavily teasing it in the DLC, which Babs was not really thrilled with some of the things Robin was talking about because they were on the job and they needed to focus on the job. And Tim was acting like a goofball in love. So, yeah. they shouldn't have done this in the comics because it completely destroys this next arc, which would have been good. But the fact that this Calendar Man arc actually shows the dating aspect of Oracle and Tim as just starting out, you can already see the continuity flaws like yourself. So this part of the comic should also be removed from the timeline, along with the whole calendar side story, which I'm going to actually talk about right now, and the return of Solomon Grundy. It never happened. Why did it never happen or occur, you ask? What's the big problem with Dorian Day kidnapping Batman for a week, Court of Owls style? Well, for one, the Batman family is called in to search for the 365 poisoned people on the list that Calendar Man gives Batman, who only gives him 24 hours, by the way, to save all these people, which he knows is impossible. One of Batman's allies that is shown in the book is not Batwoman or Batwing or any other really cool Bat family member they could have brought in. It's Azrael, who is in the non-canon comics as a Batman ally. But we know, as gamers, better than this, don't we? Considering Batman's first meeting with Azrael was in Arkham City, and his second meeting was during the Scarecrow takeover of Gotham in the Arkham Knight game. Not months prior to that incident, mind you. So the Calendar Man arc in the Knight comics is not canon. It could have been considered canon if Batwoman showed up, or someone else, or Robin, or whatever, but yeah. Batwoman also has a speaking cameo in Arkham Knight on Batman's answering machine, and she invites Bruce to her wedding. So it would have been nice for them to include her in that, but nope. They show Azrael as a Batman agent when he never was, which never happened, really ever in the Arkham Games stories whatsoever. In Arkham Knight, Azrael, as you know, was trying to become the successor of Batman, but prior to that, the games makes no mention of Azrael ever being a part of the Batman family. So when people mention the Calendar Man aspect of this arc, you can tell them that it's not canon, because I just proved to you that it isn't. It can't be. So the Scarecrow mentioned to Dorian Day at the end of his arc, by the way, that he will kill Batman soon, but not yet. Many believe this is referring to the explosion at the Wayne Manor at the conclusion of Arkham Knight and the Nightfall Protocol arc, though I and many people believe that the explosion that went off at Wayne Manor was done by Bruce to fake his death from the world. So while Dorian does appear in the crowd, and he probably was planning on killing Bruce Wayne, he didn't plant the bombs at Wayne Manor. There would be no way for him to do that, considering Wayne Manor is a fortress, and it would have the technology and the detection of the bombs being placed around it. Alfred is also home the entire time of the Arkham Knight incident, so he would have noticed the Batcomputer going crazy and Dorian sneaking around planting bombs. So while Calendar Man does appear at the end of the game, and it does look like he's responsible for being the one to kill Batman, like the comic arc is trying to imply, it never happened. He never got the opportunity to. He was going there to kill them in person, not blow them up. So I just proved this story is no longer canon and also debunked, which we've already debunked so many points, so there's really not that much left. So let's get to the Arkham Knight Annual, which is probably partially canon, but I don't think so, as it brings up previous chapters that I've proved are non-canon. So have fun with that annual book yourself if you want to. I'm not really going to touch it because, you know, Scarecrow does some stuff with Jason, puts him through the fear drug that basically plagues Batman throughout the Arkham Knight game. And Jason, who doesn't have the same training as Batman, is able to overcome his fears with really no problems whatsoever. So, yeah, not going to talk about that. Also, as we get into their Arkham Knight aspect of the game and the DLC, I feel that they've actually explained that pretty well, so there's really no reason for me to go over that. It's kind of pointless. And they did a very, very good recap of the game aspect when they're actually showing the gameplay footage and they're talking about the entirety of that like 5 or 6 hour story. And they did a great job with that, so I have no qualms with that whatsoever. The main reason why I made this podcast today was to show the inconsistencies with the comics and how the comics still present a lot of problems, even all these years later. And to warn people not to include them into the timelines because they're a fallacy. They don't work. They have so many holes in them that it's impossible to make a timeline video. I remember the day that Rocksteady was in an interview talking about the Arkham Knight prequel comics and their Arkham Knight game that was upcoming. And they said right around the time that Genesis was coming out that these stories are not connected to Arkham Knight, but they're very cool. As soon as they said that, I was actually in the process of writing a bunch of stuff, and I literally threw my papers everywhere because I had been working on a definitive timeline explaining all the Arkham games at that point, and I just said, screw it, because there's no way you could do it. And I gave up. So the fact that people still try to make definitive timeline videos, I'm not going to lie, I get a little triggered because there's no way that you can do it at all. It's impossible. You would have to go through all the books and carefully look at all the things that work and the things that don't. And it's impossible because the Arkham Knight comics, especially, are all non-canon. All of them create so many problems for the games. Most of the Arkham City comics also create a lot of problems for the games. The Arkham Origins comics do not create problems for the games. Like for the Origins and the Blackgate stuff. For the later Batman books, they create the same amount of problems as Origins did for the later Arkham City and Arkham Knight games. But for the most part, I'd say that the Origins comics actually did a better job as tie-in books to their game than the Arkham Knight tie-in comics did for theirs. So in closing, once again, the Arkham timeline video that is actually gaining a lot of traction online right now has been debunked. So I'm going to take a few minutes to open up the floor and go over some stuff with you guys if you want. If not, I can end this video, but I see that there are a couple people that want to like talk about some stuff. So why don't we get to that?
All right, so I just need to readjust some things here. I've been talking for quite a while. Woo! And just a shout out to the person that made the video again. No ill intent. I think you did fair research. I am very good at what I do. Batman is kind of my wheelhouse, so I'm a little bit more in tune to the Bat than most YouTubers are. I find things that many people do not. They kind of overlook things such as Two-Face death and problems with the books and all this other stuff. I think that your editing is phenomenal. I really enjoyed watching the timeline. I watched it while I edited. The comic book stuff has always triggered me because, like I said, I've been working for years at trying to make like a definitive 4-hour thing explaining all the history of Arkham, and it can't be done. It can't be done because even if I went through and I nitpicked certain aspects from the comic and tried to convince myself that it's canon, there are other parts of that same comic issue or arc that contradict the games, or kill a character from the games, or do something that just doesn't work well. And it's kind of pointless. Then you kind of examine your life like, what have I been doing the past like almost 10 years? You can't do it. So, I mean, this is my wheelhouse. This is what I do. And I'm ready to open up the floor to some questions if that's what people have or whatever you guys want to do. But it's been a long time. Well, thanks for stopping by, Suggestive Gaming. Good luck on your next video. Sorry, guys, I'm out of drinks. That was a long podcast. I don't think I've talked this long with this many points for a while. Oh my gosh. That was fun, though. I do want to do like one of those audio books on tapes for the Riddler book. I really challenge a lot of you guys to buy that book. Very well done. If the Arkham Knight writer says it's canon in DC and all those other people, it totally is. You guys have any questions about the timeline stuff, or you just have other random Batman questions? Oh, my throat's all wrecked now. Guys, leave Suggestive alone. The guy does a lot of research videos. Like I said, when it comes to Batman, not bragging, just fact, nobody's better at the bat than me. So I find things that most people aren't going to find. You know, I'm a little crazy. We'll say I'm eccentric when it comes to Batman. Most YouTubers, when they go through and they put together videos, and the video's fantastic, it just, some aspects were missed that you really have to pay attention to. I've been playing the Arkham games for over 10 years. I know them like the back of my hand. I know the bios, I know the characters, I know the games, I know the music. I really wanted to put music to this video, but it would get copyright claimed. There's nothing I could do about it. Warner Brothers is just not very kind with that. And I've always challenged most YouTubers when it comes to the comic. Heck, I've challenged Arkham Wiki and different Arkham Discords for years about the comics. I've even spoken to some of the writers of said comics. So it's I don't know everything. I don't know everything. When it comes to Batman, that's my area of expertise. That's something that I've been studying for 30 plus years. According to Jay Olivia, Two-Face was killed by accident. They didn't mean for that to happen. So Two-Face was in fact killed. You can't survive getting frozen by Killer Frost like that. If Two-Face would have just been knocked down and a different part of his head would have been frozen, that would have been one thing, but he's brain dead. In that universe, he's dead. Bane also was not that monstrous form until the year 11, so that was kind of like an Easter egg service, or they weren't really paying attention, like the WB animation people. Rocksteady has also come out and said that the movie is non-canon, so even though I illustrated very clear points, Rocksteady already said it's not canon years ago. So, I don't know why people seem to forget that. They said it at a Comic-Con years ago. Or game convention or whatever. I don't remember. I can tell you where I was. It was in 2015 and I was writing my Batman script and I got so pissed that I threw my script into my ceiling fan and it scattered all my notes that I had been making for the past several years. And I was pretty mad. I also went into my closet where I had a chart of, like, you know when people make a crime chart and they got little lines connecting things? Well, I went down and I tore off my sticky board and basically threw out all my research because it was for nothing. When I interviewed one of the writers behind the comics, more or less they explained to me that, you know, when we write these things, Rocksteady or the game people are doing their own thing and we're doing our best, like the Injustice guys, to try to keep to that world, but we can't necessarily know what's going on with the game because we don't have the script of the game. So, I mean, essentially, they make it up. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. Injustice came very close to being accurate because I believe Ed Boon was actually sharing details a little bit about the plot. Not so much that stuff would get leaked, but just so much that the books felt like you need to buy these books in order to understand. And the guy who was writing the prequel books of Injustice did such a good job for the prequel stuff that it actually worked. It was like one big continuous story. And it connected perfectly to the first Injustice game. However, the second book, or Injustice 2, or whatever year that is in Injustice canon, I don't know, does not work with the Injustice 2 game. Whenever they get to the Injustice 2 part of the comic, it doesn't mix with the game. They're two completely different entities. Same can be said with the Arkham Knight comics. Some of the tie-in comics worked for parts because I believe Dini was involved with some of them. And they actually, the people who were writing the comics did their best to tie it in as close as possible to the game. But all the stuff that I addressed for the past, what was it, hour and 15, 20 minutes? Yeah, it didn't happen. Not according to the game. You could argue that the Arkham continuity is the comic books are their own Arkhamverse and the games are their own Arkhamverse, but they don't connect at all. Lucius Fox never lost a finger. You can go and you can look at him in the game. He has all of his 10 figures. There's nothing that looks like it's prosthetic. There's no scarring. He has no problems typing, whereas he mentions in the comics, and I quote, "That was my typing finger, so I'm going to have problems typing now," which Bruce kind of chuckles. Batman would have righted Lucius Fox pretty hard on occasion, making fun of the fact that he had a missing finger. But none of that stuff ever happened. Lucius Fox claims to be the builder of the Arkham Tankmobile in the Arkham Knight game. The Arkham Knight comics say that it was built by a German engineer in Germany. So they're not connected. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be that guy, but it's not canon. Can everybody hear that? Everybody listening in the back? Not canon! I did all the research, so you guys didn't have to. Feel free to use this video for whatever you want. I don't care. It's not going to get viewed. Make new timeline videos. Share it with the Arkham community. I don't care. It's going to get like, I don't know, maybe like 3,000 views after this podcast. I will say this. I love the editing style of those guys, though. I thought, because they've done a lot of other videos, and I'm not going to challenge their other videos, but as soon as they step into the world of the Dark Knight and something doesn't mesh well, I'll be back. I'll be back. I'll come for you. Yes, I will come for your video and tear it to pieces. No, I won't. I'll just talk about it. But yeah, check out their other stuff, seriously. They've got a lot of really cool stuff for Resident Evil and all kinds of stuff. I enjoy listening to them from time to time. Arnold, yes, yes. Oh my gosh. Oh, Sefton Hill I would destroy. I've wanted to be able to interview Sefton Hill for years, but he always dodges me. I don't know why. I'm so likable. What does Sefton Hill have to worry about old K-Wing? What would I say that would trigger him? Okay, what wouldn't I say that would trigger Sefton Hill? Because I triggered WB Games Montreal pretty well at E3. By accident. Not Kevin! Do we have any Arkham Wiki people in the chat? You guys got some work to do. This has never been done before. I can't think of any YouTuber that's done this. You're a kind man? No. I'm not kind. I'm savage. Oh, yeah. I remember I was trying to ask Sefton Hill about Barbara Gordon and Tim Drake, and I've never seen a man move so fast away from me at E3. He was gone. It was like, can you explain the relationship between Tim and Excuse me, sir? Sir, I have a question. Oh, he's gone. He's gone. No, I think Sefton was trying really hard to be Paul Dini, and he's not. People in the back, not canon. No, 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 no. Not canon. No, 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 no. He is faster than the Flash. Yeah, he took off like a lightning bolt. Pew! Speed Force, Sefton Hill has. Gaz is fun to talk to. Gaz lets me talk about stuff once in a while. But yeah, I ask a lot of people watching this, don't bring up the Deadshot stuff. If you want to troll Rocksteady about King Shark and Boomerang, go for it, but you won't get an answer about Deadshot. Ever. Nope. That was a corporate decision. I know that for a fact, because I've done some digging myself. I'm not going to make a video on it. This podcast is too long. Nobody cares. What killed the canon? The canon, the comics did. I will say this. After Sefton took over as the writer for Arkham Knight, he did a phenomenal job for what he had. Dini was gone. Dini did not come back, nor did the writer come back from... I'm pretty sure the writer of Harley Quinn's Revenge was not Sefton Hill. I think it was somebody else, but I don't believe they came back to Arkham Knight at all. I don't believe so. I'll need to double check with some of my material. And if you're asking, what happened to that timeline board? I threw it out. It was gone. It was back in my Boston apartment. I had spent like 6 months building the thing. And sometimes I don't like PR companies. When they're, just... If you come out and say something that is going to be detrimental to the sales of your book and not get people to buy it, the whole point of tie-in comics is to tie into the game. You can't just start writing fiction that doesn't match the fiction of the game. That really raises my blood pressure, because I want a consistent storyline that I can enjoy. Like, mythology from Batman books is pretty consistent. You can go back, well, you used to be able to go back pre-52. You could go back to the 70s and 80s and connect it to 90s storylines, or 90s storylines would connect to 2000. You can't do that with the Arkham games. The Arkham games are almost like Rocksteady's trilogy is as close as you're going to get as a complete continuity. Origins is Swiss cheese. Blackgate is more than Swiss cheese. Something that has more holes than Swiss cheese. And then Assault on Arkham was supposed to use Rocksteady's universe, or Rocksteady's Arkham Asylum game, and they decided to take it right off from Blackgate. But they still incorporated fan service from Arkham Asylum, which wasn't supposed to happen until years later, according to the timeline. So it's just one big mess. But Rocksteady is going to come out officially, if they haven't already. I know their PR person, back when Assault on Arkham came out, they said that Jay Olivia's Assault on Arkham isn't canon to Arkham. I think they did that because of what happened to Two-Face. But I'm pretty sure that when they start talking about their game more, when it comes out in 2022, they're going to have to say, which we all know, which I've all proven, is that it's non-canon. It's just a fun Arkham story that isn't connected to Arkham. It uses Arkham characters. It's like an Arkham Elseworld story. Pretty good one, actually. It's a decent movie. I don't hate it. You can't connect it. Killer Frost kills Two-Face. 2009 Titan Bane appears 5 years beforehand in the Assault on Arkham movie. So Titan Bane did not exist in the Arkham timeline until 11 years. You would have had like monster-looking Bane from Arkham Origins, and instead they put in Bane from the 2009 Asylum game, which wouldn't be possible. Bane was tortured by Dr. Young to have that weird Titan appearance, which is one of the things I hate about Origins, is that they took the same idea of what happened to Bane from Asylum and threw it into the past. And then they went into reverse with Blackgate, and they made Bane basically a sickly-looking me, like a thin beanpole. So they went the opposite of what. It's just, it hurts my head. My BP is fine, by the way. I'm not upset. I'm not mad. I don't think I mudsling too much. It wasn't my intent. When I talk a lot, I have a lot to say. When I'm doing these podcasts, I can't have the chat open because you guys are a distraction. You guys are terrible. You guys mess with my ADD. Ugh! I can't have the chat open. So once I get done, I mean, I don't think anybody who's made a timeline video is going to go through and change aspects of it. I don't expect people to. I just, it's going to be interesting going forward, but at least like this audio thing, whatever you want to call it, is out there on the internet. People can use it for whatever they want. I don't care. I did all the research. You just have to listen. If somebody wants to go through and put the time codes after the video like cuts out the introduction, you're free to, and I'll put the time codes in the video for different talking points for you guys. But you guys did great. I'm a little beat. You guys have any questions that aren't about Gotham Knights or because I just kind of want to keep talking about the comics if possible. K-Wing, is the script for the Gotham Knights villain wish list been finished? I had to scrap the Gotham Knights wish list because I know the reading material now that the team is doing, so I had to go and change my my villain list, because my villain list was in the similar mindset of what the Arkham Origins team would have done. And now that I know that that's not a possibility, I had to change my thinking completely, and I'm going through and looking at a different perspective for the villains. So the villain video won't be ready for some time unless we do it as a podcast like this. I could animate it or whatever, do it like 10-minute style once I have all the information, or I can just spitball. It's up to you guys, because everything is different. How many times has Joker been killed? Too many to count, but he always comes back, except in Arkham City. Then he don't come back. But I will tell you guys a character I think that will appear based on one of the reading material that one of the staff members likes for Red Robin. I could see the General or some other Red Robin-related villains showing up that I would never have thought of. I would also suggest the Talon wannabe from the Grayson New 52 run, what was his name? The friend of Dick Grayson who was raised by the Talons, but he didn't become a Talon. What was his name? Help me out, guys. Ah, crap, I can't remember his name. Starts with a, dang it. I have so much Arkham stuff in my head, I can't think comic stuff. I think it started with an S. Ah, crap, this is driving me crazy. I don't have my cell phone either to look it up. Dang it. He was in the Court of Owls Nightwing tie-in stuff, sort of. Oh my gosh. No, not Lincoln March, not William Cobb. No, he was an acrobat like Dick Grayson. He's not a Talon. Ah, this is driving me crazy. No, he's not a Talon. Starts with an S. It's on the tip of my tongue, too. I hate this. Can you send me your Batmobile? Can I drive it? Anyway, there's this character that Dick Grayson fights in the New 52. No, it's not Scorpion. It starts with an S, though, I'm pretty sure. He's raised by the Court of Owls, and he hates Dick Grayson. So I could see him being like a thorn in Dick Grayson's side in the game, if they went that route. And some of the reading materials suggest that that character could be in the game. Possibly. That's it! Yes! Sakio, whatever. That thing, that guy, that's him. That's the guy. Thank you, Garrett. My gosh. The wannabe Court of Owls guy. Yeah. He was raised as a Talon, but the Court of Owls kicked him out. That's him. Mm-hmm. That's him. Man, I had brain fog. I have all this Arkham stuff going on in my head. I have no room for comic book stuff. So is everybody watching this understand now why the comics can't be considered canon? Like why the Arkham Knight comics are all... Does everybody understand, as well as Assault on Arkham? Because I can't leave till I know my job is done. You people have to know what I laid out as fact. And then I can go do whatever. Because that was a long podcast. My gosh. Alright, sweet. Yes, sir. Alright. So your job is to educate the masses. There's 500 of you guys. Smash that like button if at all possible. I don't think we're going to get demonetized. One thing I did not want to do is, I know when people do recaps or they do response videos, they like to use people's work. And those guys did a lot of work in their videos, so I wasn't going to go through and actually show their video and play it and stuff like that, because I don't like when people do that to me either, so I didn't think that Suggestive Gaming would appreciate that. So I took a lot of notes, groaned a little bit, and, I went off my bullet points as best I can. I think I might have missed some stuff. Some people are asking me about Arkham VR. They did bring up Arkham VR in their video. Arkham VR is known as the Nightmare. Bruce Wayne is having a nightmare before the events of Arkham Knight. It is canon. So all of you guys saying, you didn't talk about Arkham VR. I forgot about Arkham VR, sorry. Arkham VR is canon. It's part of Rocksteady stuff. So, and the Riddler's Gambit is also canon. Hey, I'm here to provide a service for you guys, so. And, the Batman community in general, so. If there's something people are confused about, I just don't... It's hard for me when... I know why YouTubers do it. When they make a video and they present it as fact, or something like that, because they're trying to get as many eyeballs on their video as possible. That's why people will write things like, what you need to know, and this is the truth, or this is the timeline, or whatever. When most of the timeline videos that you'll find on YouTube for Arkham are pretty much the same as the one that I challenged tonight. They all have the same issue, where they try to look to the comics. And as fans as Batman and stuff, they want to be able to try to continue the story. But if you really look at everything the comics has to offer, and then you go back and you explore the game, Lucius Fox never lost a finger. Lucius Fox is the one that created the Batmobile in Arkham Knight. Lucius Fox did not create the new Batmobile in the Arkham Knight comics. Jason Todd was aware of the Tankmobile in the comics, was not aware of the Tankmobile until he saw it in the Arkham Knight game. And it's not really going through a rabbit hole. You can just see that both material, the comics and the game, are Arkham, but they're not whole. They can't be. They're Arkham entities, but they're in their own separate time and space from each other. Almost like the Arkham Knight comics and the Arkham Knight game are parallel to each other, but they're not in sync. And they can't be in sync, so they can't be included in continuity. And the thing is, what I would capitalize on if I had the time is you could create a whole Arkham multiverse. Now, since DC is really pushing the whole multiverse thing again for like the next, 4 or 5 years. And you could explain, the whole multiverse aspect, but that just makes people even more confused. But it's very confusing. When I'm on Discords and stuff, people ask me like how to connect the Arkham games. Like, how would you do it? Where was your timeline? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you make this video years ago? It wasn't possible. The only way I can tell you, the only way that I could have done an Arkham timeline video, being honest, is if I would have made stuff up. If I would have gone and I would have taken elements of the story and then interjected my own stuff so that it could actually connect to the game, then it could be full canon from the comics to the game. But if I personally have to go in and change the material that already existed, then that's pointless. I thought about it. I thought about it years ago, back in 2015, that I was actually going to write an addendum or like an addition to the storyline so it all makes sense. But I decided against it because it would be wrong. It's not my work. And also it would be a fabrication because it's not real. It's not a published work. It would have made stuff better, honestly, but it's impossible. And that's the problem I have with tie-in projects and established properties. Like, when you work on a game that's already been established and you're doing a prequel of it, you really, 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 really need, and I'm talking about the writers, I'm not talking about the people with the video, you really have to do your research. If you are a writer and you are doing a tie-in product, you need to get as much material as possible from the company that you're working with, or very, very carefully study what came beforehand. And also, you should wait to make your tie-in stuff until at least the game releases. Because that way you can kind of make it connect a little bit. Or, don't even do tie-ins. Screw tie-ins. Do after stories. Very easy for you to do after content. You don't have to worry about all that nonsense, because you're continuing the story. But when they're asking you to do stuff that connects to it when the game's not even going to follow what you wrote, is pointless. That means you buying stuff was pointless, because it doesn't do anything. All you did is you just wasted a bunch of money on some cool Batman books that have no connection to the games at all. They're different. So that's when I stopped buying the tie-in comics when I got smart. And I won't be buying the tie-in comics to the Gotham Knights game, because I can tell you if they do that, they're not going to connect. They won't. They never will. I will buy stuff after the games if they want to continue the story or whatever. But, nope. stuff that goes within a couple weeks or months of the games is never a good idea because it's going to be completely different. Always. Always. So kind of like Arkham Origins. Ooh, that's salt in the wound. That's salt in the wound right there. What do you think Suicide Squad takes place 7 years after Arkham Knight, apparently. 7 years after Arkham Knight. Don't ask me how. Don't know, don't care. Don't care anymore. I'm just going to play the game and I'm just going to be like, screw it. Toss all my papers up in the... I already did that. I already threw all my timeline papers in 2015. My gosh, the stack of that crap. That... Did I ever take a picture of that bulletin board and post it on Twitter? I might have. Hey guys, look at my Arkham Wednesday video. I'm going to tell you the de facto timeline of Arkham. It's going to be amazing. Rocksteady comes out. Yeah, Genesis isn't canon. Neither are the tie-in comics. Ah! I hate you. You know how long I've been writing this stupid thing? Since 2009! Never mind. Yeah, that's the rumor. The rumor is that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League takes place 7 years after Arkham Knight. Oof. Yep. Don't worry. I mean, I've told you guys this time and time again. What you can do is more or less, with the comics and the games, enjoy them both separately. They're both Batman. Do not connect them, because they can't. Unless you're going to pick and choose what goes into your canon. Like, you could... Well, no, with the Arkham Knight comics, you're screwed. You can't. Because they all go back to... The Arkham Knight comics continue from Arkham Endgame, or Arkham City Endgame, and Arkham City Endgame is not canon, because Joker in the games never had a last will and testimony where... he set up a bunch of bombs post-mortem, blew up Arkham Asylum and parts of Arkham City. All this other stuff never happened. The fact that Arkham Asylum is alive and well at the end of the game should make people go, wait a second, how is this? Because why would you rebuild an abandoned Arkham to look exactly like it was before it was blown up several months prior? That would make no sense. That would be a waste of all of Gotham's taxpayer money to rebuild a facility they're not even using. Hello? It doesn't make sense. How do people see it? Doesn't make sense. So, the fact that all the Arkham Knight comics follow Arkham Endgame, which blew up Arkham to tiny bits, nothing was left. You can't. You can't. Impossible. Impossible. No. You cannot. So, yeah. My BP is fine. Don't worry about it. So if Gotham Knights is based on the Court of Owls, would you overall consider it to be a Nightwing game? Uh-huh. Even though Batman is technically the focal point of the game, even though he's not in it. I mean, it's still a game about Batman's legacy. So it's Warner Brothers' fault. Yeah, you could say that. But, I mean, is a game really going to allow you access to their script, though, when you're writing your tie-in stuff? I mean, maybe Marvel would allow that, but DC doesn't. DC, good luck getting information on their game stuff. It would be a smart idea if you're trying to convince your audiences to buy, quote, tie-in products and actually have them tie into the story. Instead, what you have is Elseworld comics that are Arkham, but they're not Arkham Knight game. They're just Arkham. It kind of riles people up when they've been had, because then you're like, oh my gosh, why was I paying all these money for these books that don't even matter? What was the point of it? Well, they would argue, okay, you bought the books because you like Batman. No, I bought the books because I wanted to learn more about this Arkham world that I love so much, and they don't connect. So, yeah, it's kind of pointless. Really. I mean, in fact, this podcast is kind of pointless. Their Arkham Timeline video is pointless. It doesn't work. It doesn't matter. The series is over, technically. Maybe in a couple years when people are trying to put together stuff and they see this debunk thing, they'll listen to this and be like, how in the world is Suicide Squad going to connect to this universe? And I'm going to go, in 2022, I don't care. Doesn't matter. Play the game, shut off your brain, and just don't buy the tie-in crap, because they're going to ruin your life. Doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Excellent editing on Suggestive Gaming's part, but, I mean, it's just, I debunked their video, I win. Woo! Everything is pointless! But it was fun last night. They challenged me, even though they didn't challenge me. I mean, I watched their video and I was just, you could picture me pacing my office, because I did pace. And it was just like, wait a second, whoa. They talked about Endgame. Endgame in the Arkham community is considered suspect because Arkham Asylum is blown to tiny bits by the Joker. In fact, the whole Joker shenanigans of his corpse never happened, and it's never mentioned in the games. And because it's never mentioned in the games, it never happened with Gordon's monologue. Gotham was quote-unquote peaceful. There was no Metamorpho, there was no Clayface Zombie, there was no Suicide Squad, there was none of this. And then you're like, so how can it be canon? So I'm pacing back and forth in my office last night, and I'm just like, aha! I'm going to do a response thing, but I'm too lazy to actually make a video, so I'm just going to do a podcast. That's pretty much what happened. And I think this was my most civil response in 10 years. I'm proud of myself. I was a hothead back in the day. I was. I've matured. A little. No, I don't want to talk about Joker War. Not tonight. No. Yeah, you can't be the Question and connect the Arkham timeline. Even the Question couldn't do it. The Question would say a lot of expletives and break things. Because even he couldn't do it. 5G is dead. Confirmation, 5G is dead. It's over. Jim Lee said it is dead. As long as he's there, it's dead. It's dead. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff that's going to be happening in 2021, but a full woke 5G recast, reboot, gone. There will be a Luke Fox Batman miniseries starting in 2021 that will last until, I believe, January from March. And then you'll have different Bruce Wayne Batman books. I believe Luke Fox is going to end up being Batman of his own multiverse Earth, possibly the the Dakotaverse? What is that? What is the name of that? What was the name of Dwayne McDuffie's? Dang it! This is what happens when I try to talk about Arkham and then go back to comics. It starts with an M. It starts with a freaking M. Milestone! Crap! Yes, that's it. Milestone Earth. Milestone Universe. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Appreciate that. You guys are so smart. Give yourselves a round of applause. Woo! Comic smarts. So, yeah. But, all that stuff is going to be really cool going forward. And it was nice that Jim Lee actually confirmed that it's DC 5G is dead. That was Dido's baby and some of the crazies that were editors that were all fired. And DC has a new plan. And we're going to have some new stuff that's going to come from it. The DC Winter thing is new. It's a shame that Batman Beyond was canceled, but I've been talking to people, and apparently Batman Beyond was going to be canceled anyway because of DC 5G. So most of the books that they're canceling were still technically part of their 5G plan. Batgirl, Batman Beyond, Titans. The difference is a lot of these characters aren't going to be killed and replaced now, but who knows where they're going to show up again next year. Probably be back by 2022. I would bet that Batgirl or a Batgirl book with Cassandra Cain or something will probably make an appearance late 2021, early 2022. because they're going to want people to buy Batgirl books, and they're going to want to put Cassandra on it because Cassandra is a very beloved Batgirl. And they want to do the whole mentorship between Oracle and Batgirl again, because that sold books like crazy. Robert Pattinson is emo Batman. No, he's not. All Batmen have had eyeshadow or football makeup under their eyes in film. That's doesn't mean anything. They were just showing that, Bruce Wayne puts that like shoe stuff on his eyes when he took off his cowl, whereas most times they just kind of cut away and they don't show that. But every Batman live action that I can think of has had to use the football or sports makeup or whatever you want to call it. I don't know sports stuff, but yeah. But yeah, I think we're good. So you guys have a great night. What about the Three Jokers and the Return of Nightwing? I'm going to be talking about the Nightwing stuff later this month. We'll be back as the podcast to talk about the Nightwing Three Jokers thing. I really don't want to talk about it today. I'm happy Nightwing's back, but I don't want to talk about it. Mainly because it makes my head hurt going from Arkham to comics and switching back and forth. It's like I have to close... Right now in my head, I have Arkhamverse open. I have the comics and I have the games open and ready to answer questions. And then you guys are bringing up comic book related questions on the other side of my head. So it's like the mini person inside me is running back and forth between different aspects of my mind, trying to answer as best I can, but I can't really get the information out fast enough, and I'm messing up. So if you could just stick to Arkham related stuff right now, I will be able to more competently respond to things. But you're making the man inside my head run around a lot, and it's giving me a headache. Because I'm not ready for those questions. See you on Wednesday? Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've got a gig with Power Rangers tomorrow and throughout this week, but get some good rest, dude. I don't sleep. I never sleep. I'm not mad at you guys. You guys are amazing. I just hope that I was able to educate a lot of people, because that's... Remember, I wanted to educate, not infuriate. That was the whole thing. Educate, not infuriate. While also punching crime in the face. There we go, that's it. Road to Arkham, not canon. Part of it is not canon, yes. The element where Harley Quinn uses the Titan formula to torture Bane. In the game, Harley Quinn did have access to everyone's cells, but Bane was being tortured by Dr. Young. If Harley Quinn was the one who turned Bane psycho... then Harley Quinn would have been on Bane's list to kill, and of course Bane was after the witch in Spanish, which I don't know Spanish, and Dr. Young was on Bane's list because she did horrible atrocities to him, which the problem I have with Arkham Origins doing the whole monster Bane thing, they basically took the idea that Rocksteady created, and then they made a bigger mess for Bane, because Bane was not supposed to transform into that monster if you go by Batman's reaction to seeing him in the Arkham Asylum game. When Batman Kevin Conroy looks at what has happened to Bane, who did not look like that ever, to Arkham Batman. Why, Origins? Why? It's not hard. Why can't people just pay attention? Gosh! It undermines a character! It just does! I don't like it when people mess with established future games in their prequels! It drives me batty! Because it doesn't work. Oh... Nah. Is the Batman Beyond movie still happening? I don't know. Possibly. Not Arkham related, though. Is Batman's serious house on a serious Earth canon? To what? Arkham? What if Arkham Origins is canon if they didn't do Bane the way that they did? There's a lot of aspects that could have made it like completely connect to the future games. But Blackgate just... It's not necessarily that Arkham Origins was a problem. It was the game that came after Arkham Origins, which was Blackgate. Blackgate is the black sheep of WB Games Montreal. Arkham Origins did a little bit of mistakes for future Batman games, like the Bane transformation and, combining elements of Nightfall and whatever, because Nightfall did in fact happen. So I was actually thinking that Batman was going to have his back broken in Arkham Origins, but of course that didn't happen. But in the Arkham universe, Nightfall did happen where Batman did have his back broken, like around year 10, year 9 of the timeline, which there was no game, there's no tie-in material, it's just Dini telling people in both Arkham Asylum and Arkham City and some of his canon books that Nightfall did in fact happen, just not quite like it did in the comics, which we've already talked about in this podcast. So, I mean, there's really no point to it. But it really feels like WB Games Montreal, at their prime, they were just trying to make a really fun gameplay game for Batman, and the story was just kind of secondary, and they didn't pay attention enough to a lot of the elements of Asylum and City, and just wanted to do their own thing. I've been saying for years that it would probably have been better if Batman Arkham Origins was its own separate thing, because there was so much more they could have worked with without being restricted by future established stuff. That's why I'm so excited about Gotham Knights, because they have their own sandbox that they can keep building on for years without having to worry about adhering to a stricter continuity, which is going to be good for everybody. You have to be a masterful writer to do a prequel and connect it to later stuff, because if you screw anything up, then you've already messed up future games that have come out before your game released. Oof. And Blackgate just did all that. It changed the meeting of Catwoman and Batman from what Dini said happened, according to the Arkham tapes from Asylum and City and other pieces of information. It changed Joker and Penguin's... I wanted to see Joker and Penguin's incident that was talked about in one of the Arkham games. You know, that fight would have been funny to see. They could have done that in Arkham Origins or, whatever, but they choose to omit certain things that it's really, really, really hard to say Asylum and Origins are connected. Parts of them are, but not completely. They can't be. Because they don't add up. It's like picking and choose what's canon and what isn't. Oh my gosh. Man, DC is always horrible when it comes to continuity. Batman books are pretty consistent until the New 52. Pretty consistent before the New 52. What is your favorite Batman Arkham Knight skin? Probably Keaton. I like Keaton. I like the Keaton skin a lot. I've used that quite a bit. Oh my gosh. Are we going to get a Kingdom Come Lord? Oh my gosh. I mean, I would prefer to do a Kingdom Come Lord like this, like just as a podcast. Because, I mean, it's hard for me to run around as a Batman skin that's not connected to Kingdom Come. Because it doesn't work. The closest you could come to the Kingdom Come skin is the Arkham Origins game, but I don't believe I have access to that skin anymore without playing through the game all the way over again, and I have no real reason to play through Arkham Origins again because the copyright involved just makes me not want to pick the game up anymore. I've wanted to stream Arkham Origins over on Twitch or something like that, but then I couldn't upload it to YouTube because either post it without music or whatever, but we'll see. We'll see about that. I mean, I love the podcast style personally because it's less work for me. I work a lot with Amber in the afternoon, and then I edit our other channel. So these podcasts are basically my only way of really surviving on this channel right now, and live streams pretty much. What's my favorite Arkham game? It's Arkham City. Paul Dini's Last Ride. When are you going to stream Blackgate? Oh, why did you have to say that name, Garrett? Well, I'm ending the stream. Bye. I don't know. I guess next month. I guess October would be the best time to do it. I'm really packed in September. I've got my Bandai Namco Power Rangers. Or no, not sorry, Bandai. Yeah, I keep calling them Bandai. I got the Hasbro Power Rangers thing tomorrow and this week. And then Namco Bandai has the Dragon Ball Fighter character come out. I don't know if I'm getting early access to that character or not. I need to check my emails, which I don't want to because I've felt like I've done a lot of work today. I don't really feel like reading tons of press releases and other things right now. I just want to go to sleep. But I can't go to sleep because I have to edit a bunch of videos still. Blackgate released in October of 2013, so it makes sense to do in October. I'm always more in a Batman streaming mood in October. I just am. Luke, by the way, today it's been 10 years since your first Let's Play. Batman Brave and the Bold. Woot. That's awesome. Wow, I'm old. Did a good job. Thank you. Come on, K-Wing. You've played Dark Tomorrow. You can surely play Blackgate. Ooh. Blackgate is so confusing, though. I'm just worried about losing it on the stream, personally, because I went through and I played that game a lot on the 3DS before I did my walkthrough. Because you have to remember that I got the Blackgate game early from WB Games, and I posted it on release day, I believe. Yeah, I posted my first episode of the walkthrough on release day because that game was so confusing, like Symphony of the Night, that I had to know what I was doing in order to make the walkthrough. That was a lot of work, especially because I was playing Arkham Origins and Blackgate at the same time, releasing content simultaneously on both channels. That was insane. That was probably the hardest I've ever had to work, I think. Because I was doing Disney Infinity work, I was doing Blackgate work on the Let's Play channel, plus I was doing the Arkham Origins series with Amber, and I was doing DLC and skin videos at the same time. I probably released the first, in October, probably close to 200 videos, I think, between both channels, just on Batman. That was a lot of work. All right, so I'm spent. If you guys want to know all the different talking points, feel free to listen to the podcast again. Go for it. And if somebody wants to go through and make time codes for the different discussions, I'll see them in the comment section and I'll add them to the video, like in the description, so people can find the different topics they want to listen to. Because I know a lot of people listening to this video, I didn't really talk about Origins and Blackgate because I feel like the video that I was responding to did an excellent job of doing the gameplay, presenting the story that was pretty entertaining, and their editing was great. So my only issue with their video was discussing the Assault on Arkham and the comics, like Endgame, Arkham Knight, Batgirl Begins, and Genesis, and I think that was it. I think that's all we really spent a lot of time talking about. We spent a good half of this podcast just talking about the Arkham Knight comics. At least 45 minutes was Arkham Knight comics. I only spent maybe 15 minutes on Endgame, the Joker bomb fiasco thing that never happened in Arkham Knight. The game. The Gameverse. Gameverse and Comicverse. Two different things. But yeah, you guys are all in agreement. We're good. It seems like you guys are pretty civil. Thanks for not going after the YouTuber that I was debunking. Appreciate that. You guys are the coolest fans ever. And I had a lot of fun with this podcast. I'm going to have to rest my voice because I've been talking for quite a while. I can hear it's getting a little gravelly. And yeah, I don't think I have anything else to do other than just get to my editing. So, all right. good chat, people. Thanks so much for hanging out. And yeah, awesome. I can try to do something on Wednesday. I don't know what I'll talk about. Probably just briefly. We can have a little podcast about either the Three Jokers if you want, or Joker War. It's up to you guys. Let me know in the comment section below. Not these comments. This is stream stuff. This is usually going to vanish. YouTube tends to remove stuff, or at least my network does. So leave it in the actual comment section, and then I can reply to you and stuff. This is going to disappear. All right, take care, everybody. I'm going to put on the end music and call it a night. God bless. Happy gaming. All that good stuff. I will see you next time when we punch the crime in the face of knowledge. No, that's stupid. Whatever. Peace! Whoops. Well, that's weird. Okay, that's weird. That's not...